think we're live.
Are we live?
Mm-hmm.
All right. It's good to be live and alive. Good Shabbos,
Do you
everyone.
look like a dental hygienist with this?
I don't know, but
I don't want to see in your mouth. That's not my thing.
you know, a shield, a face mask, whatever it is to keep you safe, to keep the people around us safe. I'm all for it. Well, good Shabbos, everyone. We look forward to a wonderful Shabbat service tonight. A lot of food for thought this particular week. We have a few things going on in Temple. I'm sure most of you got the announcement either via Facebook or the video or the letter that it is official that our high holidays are going to be streamed this year. And some people have expressed a disappointment, which on the one hand, it touched me. Like, disappointment is a real response that people want to go to services, they want to be together. But it's a long process. It would take up the whole service, but unfortunately, synagogue after synagogue throughout America is making this difficult choice. Vast majority are deciding that the safest way and the highest value of pikuach nefesh is to have it streamed. But we're going to add a little technology so that hopefully you'll see some familiar faces from time to time. The services will be a little bit shorter, so you might appreciate that. But we're going to do our very, very best to provide a wonderful experience for everyone. So we look forward to it. We'll have a town meeting or so and kind of fill you in from time to time. In the meantime, though, there are things that you can do spiritually to get ready for high holidays. And one is to sign up for our High Holiday Boot Camp, which starts August 11th. So Rabbi Cookie Olshine, well, I should call her Sergeant Olshine, Sergeant Axelrod, and Sergeant Hutchings, we are going to be getting you in spiritual shape for the high holidays. 5 classes on Zoom that will lead us gently into the high holidays, and I think you're going to learn things about the holidays that will really enrich your experience this year. Now, next Friday, we're trying something a little new for our congregation. Everyone says we want to get together. How could we do it virtually? Here to explain that, Cantor Hutchins.
Well, I know we all want an oneg. I want an oneg. I miss the oneg. So now you're going to have your own oneg at home. It's been 6 months without an oneg. Can you believe it? But we're going to be together.
Well, haven't I lost any weight then? Oh, well, that's the way it goes.
Until we can be together for the oneg again, we are going to try a little Zoom happy hour, and it's open to anyone who's joining us for services, and we're going to...
well, it's a Zoom half hour. It's a happy hour, but it's only a half hour.
Yeah, okay, fine. Okay. So what is that, 6:30 then?
6:15 to 6:45.
Okay, and then you have 15 minutes to get ready for services, and maybe you can even create a watch party within your happy hour and join us for services that way. Ask me how. You're like, how do you do that? I'll let you know.
Yeah, how do you do that?
When you're on Zoom, you share the screen with our live stream, and then you can watch us. So it's like technology within.
But how do they get invited to this happy hour?
So you should have gotten an Evite that asked if you wanted to come, and it would give you the Zoom code. I believe they're going to send out another email to our membership list and to our constant contact, there's like 1,400 of you that should have already received an email. If you didn't, contact Roberta in the office or Regina, and they will get you an invite.
So get the Evite. It tells you what Zoom room to go in at 6:15 next Friday. Hundreds of people should sign up. And then they push one little button, and all of a sudden you are in all these virtual rooms, and you get to chit-chat with some new people and some of your friends.
But to be clear, we're not providing the nosh. You have to provide your own nosh.
Yeah, you provide your own nosh. We provide the virtual space. So it's supposed to be a lot of fun. We're going to give it a try, and if it works, we'll do it again.
Yeah.
Now, there's another little thing coming up. Religious school. What about that?
It was canceled this year.
No. I'm so disappointed. Would you stop? They're going to take you seriously.
No, it's not canceled this year.
No, it is not canceled.
It starts in just a few weeks. On August 30th, we'll meet our teachers. You do need to register ahead of time, so there is a link that went out several times, and if you didn't get the link, you can go on our website. The link is right there for registration. Please sign up for your child or your children so that they can get all signed up. And then once you do that one, you should have gotten today also, if you are a religious school family, a link to choose whether you want to go completely virtual, you want to do the hybrid program, some in person. There's some questions on there that we need to know as far as getting you early or late session to get you in the right class that you want to be in. So please fill out both of those Google forms whenever you have a chance in the next couple of days. It'll help us greatly.
All right, so there is religious school, there is in-person religious school. It's double session, Hebrew school, web streamed only on Tuesdays, but also double session. If you're a little bit confused, give Cantor a call or give Roberta or Deborah, our clergy assistant, a call.
Happy to send you the town hall that you missed on Wednesday. You can watch the recording and it'll clear everything up.
All right, so without further ado, no more announcements. That's it. Ricky, take us into Shabbos.
Sounds good. We welcome the Shabbat angels. If you're following us, page 142.
Let me see that.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharim, Malachei Elyon, Mi-Melech, Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Bachem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi-Melech, Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Barchoni l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi-Melech, Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi-Melech, Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Beautiful. I forgot to invite Bodhi to come forward. Bodhi, come on up. We shouldn't call him a special guest, a special addition to our service, because tomorrow, I think, is a very special day in your life. What happens tomorrow, Bodhi?
Tomorrow my bar mitzvah.
All right, you've been
It starts
looking forward-
tonight, right now.
All right, you've been looking forward to it?
Very much.
All right, and what school do you go to?
Bob Miller.
Bob Miller, are your friends going to be tuning in and rooting you on?
I hope so.
All right.
It's really too bad you can't see his school shoes because they are very cool. They are bar mitzvah style shoes right there.
So because you're becoming bar mitzvah tomorrow, you're going to help participate in tonight's service, and
Yes,
we
I
look
will.
forward to it. All right, so we'll see you in just a little bit.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. All right, get out your candlesticks. Let's make Shabbos at home. Page 121, if you're following in your Siddur, as we welcome Shabbat with the mitzvah of kindling the Shabbat lights.
As these Shabbat lights give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, by our own day, be among those who kindle light. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu le'adlik ner shel Shabbat.
125. Where has this week vanished? Is it lost forever? Will I ever recover anything from it? The joy of life, the unexpected victory, the realized hope, the task accomplished. Will I ever be able to banish the memory of pain, the sting of defeat, the heaviness of boredom? On this day, let me keep for a while what must drift away. On this day, let me be free of the burdens that must return. On this day, Shabbat, abide. Help me to withdraw for a while from the flight of time, contain the retreat of the hours and days from the grasp of frantic life. Let me learn to pause, if only for this day. Let me find peace on this day. Let me enter into a quiet world this day. On this day, Shabbat, abide. (138) We welcome Shabbat bride, L'chadoti.
Verses 1, 5, and 9. Yalla l'chadodi, yalla likrat kala, yalla b'nei Shabbat, b'nei Shabbat.
for the Baruch.
Page 146. We read together on the top of page 151 with Bodhi.
As you taught Torah to those whose names I bear, teach me Torah too. Its mystery beckons, yet I struggle with its truth. You meant Torah for me. Did you mean the struggle for me too? Don't let me struggle alone. Help me to understand, to be wise, to listen, to know. Lead me into the mystery.
Baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai echad. Baruch Shem kevod halechuto leolam vaed.
Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Blessed God's glorious majesties forever and ever. Please be seated. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levacha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha u'v'lechtecha v'derech u'shachbecha u'v'kumecha u'kshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha u'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'visharecha leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'yitem kedoshim lelohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem lelohim ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem emet. We read responsively on the top of page 157. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot.
That wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness.
That there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together.
ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה ומרים ובני ישראל הכנו שירה בשמחה רבה ואמרו כולם. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, נורא תהילות, עושי פלא, עושי פלא. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, נורא תהילות, עושי פלא, עושי פלא. ונאמר כי יפאר אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
Page 160.
Hashivenu Adonai, Eloheinu Shalom, V'hamidenu Shomrinu L'chaim. Spread the shelter of your peace over us. Guide us with wisdom, compassion, and strength. Save us for the sake of your name. Guide us with wisdom, compassion, and strength. Hashivenu Adonai, Eloheinu L'Shalom. V'hamidenu Shomrinu
All right, should we get ready for tomorrow with Yismafu? All right, he thought he was done, but he's not done yet. So, we've kind of started a tradition on our live stream that we prepare you for the bar mitzvah. We teach you the dance the Friday night before. But if you've been following this whole time, you are well aware of what the dance is. So, again, we do this because it brings the joy to our hearts to be a little silly, right? And have a little bit of fun. But the promise is that even if you feel silly during it, you're going to feel better in 3 minutes. That is our promise. So, what does the silliness look like? Yismechu v'malechutecha shomrei 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. All right, so if you got that, we're going to do it 8 times, and you're going to feel like a champion after. Page 162. Yismechu v'malechutecha shomrei 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha shomrei 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Mikadashei, Mikadashei Shavi Shabbat. All right, see, you feel better than you did. Now, the truth is that I learned this Yismachu from one of my mentors, Rabbi Stephen Einstein, and when he didn't have to do the dance because it was all on his face when he would lead us in this prayer. I'm sure he's still leading congregations from time to time in this prayer, and everybody just fills with joy. So we add the dance to give us a little extra oomph so that we can get to the level of joy that he used to give when he would lead us in this prayer. So thank you. We're going to do that again tomorrow morning, so now you know the dance. We now turn to our Amidah prayers. We rise on page 164.
Pray as if everything depended on God. Act as if everything depended on you.
Adonai, Sephatai Tiftach, Ufia Gitei Latecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch Atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanura, El Elyon, Gomel Hasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, U'mevi Geula Livnei B'neihem, Lema'an Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Abraham Bezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayeh Hakol, Atah Rav Le'Hoshia, Mori Hatal, Mechalkel Chayim Bechesed, Mechayeh Hakol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Merofei Cholim, U'matir Asurim, U'mekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Michamocha Bal Gevurot, U'midom Elav, Melech Menit, U'mechayeh, U'matzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman Atal HaChayot HaKol, Baruch Atah Adonai, Mechayeh HaKol, Atah Kadosh V'Shimcha Kadosh, V'Kadoshim B'chol Yom Yalucha Selah, Baruch Atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh.
We continue in silent devotion through page 180, using the words on the right or the left side of the page, or the words within your heart. When you have completed your prayers, please be seated. Please submit your Misha Berach names at this time.
Misha Berach literally means the one that blesses. Sometimes it's a hard world out there, especially a week such as this. When we look on television, we see that incredible explosion in Lebanon, lives lost in a single moment, others maimed, injured. Photo on television, but lives that matter to so many. The ripple effect goes throughout the world, for we now offer our prayers of hope and healing to those that we've never met, but we extend our love and hope that somehow our compassion reaches them. But closer to home, we think of those in our immediate circle who are in need of our prayers. And we hope that God brings to them hope and healing. For people who struggle with the matters of the heart or mind or of addiction, that they might find a renewed sense of commitment to faith and to overcome their struggles that they face. To those who are caregivers, we ask that they be emboldened as they help others who are in need of help, that in their love and caring and ministering to others, that they too will have that sense of personal healing, for they worry so very much about those that they love. And so if there are names for you to submit tonight, Cantor will read them in just a moment. I especially think of my sister Dina and so many close to me at this time.
And we think of my brother-in-law Marty as he's recovering from surgery today. We also think of Devorah Batmalka, Margaret and Alan Hance, Linda Brown, Laura Burrell, Tyler Estep, Fern Procheski, Rochelle Silas, Jesse Griffin, Malcolm Davis, Helen Perryman, Mindy Bachrach, Betty Todman, and Marilyn Goldstein, all of those affected by COVID-19. Dee Bale, Larry White, Rick Rosenbaum, Larry Henderson, Justin Acosta, Renee Wolf and family, Gerald Wolf, Rick Rosenbaum,
Ken Manchetti and Nancy Cherry.
Rose Downs, Lena Burrell.
So wherever you are, reach out to your loved ones and join in singing Misha Berach. Seated. Well, good Shabbos, everyone. Well, of all the events that we thought or didn't think were going to make the headlines, who knew that a conversation between two Jewish comedians on WTF podcast would be what caused quite a stir, at least earlier in the week it did. Well, about a week ago, Jewish comedian Seth Rogen appeared on fellow Jewish comedian Mark Marone's hugely popular WTF podcast. And the purpose of his appearance was to promote his new film called An American Pickle. And in the conversation, he got himself in quite a pickle. Well, what's this movie about? He plays a Jewish immigrant to America who falls into a vat of pickles in 1919 and then wakes up 100 years later. As you can see, it's a serious documentary. And I believe that this movie is streaming on HBO Max, I think tomorrow, or not tomorrow, on Sunday. So it's going to be a good, solid comedy, a Jewish comedy. It's already gotten some good reviews. And it's kind of a fish out of water. You know, here is a guy from 100 years ago who practices Judaism like the old ways, wakes up in modern day America, and between him and his great-grandson, they kind of discover what Judaism is or isn't and really what it's all about. Now, those of you who hear this plot and are members of Sisterhood may remember that I notoriously reviewed a book called The Frozen Rabbi, which had a very similar plot. It was about a rabbi 100 years ago who fell into water that was ice cold, and he was frozen like an ice cube and kept frozen for 100 years, made his way from Eastern Europe as an ice cube, and thawed out accidentally 100 years later. Well, same sort of plot, but this book evolved where the rabbi got very accustomed to 20th century religion and became a celebrity and a star, and it all went to his head. And he became kind of this smarmy talk show evangelical rabbi. So it was actually a satire on modern day religion in contrast to old school religion of the 1900s. So my take though is that Seth Rogen's comedy will be less satirical, more straightforward comedy, but again, I digress. Nothing controversial so far here. So let's go back to the interview. And what's ironic is that what has gotten the most attention in that interview was not the film. It was this conversation between two people that kind of went astray, unscripted, and entered into a conversation about Israel, and that is what made headlines. So what could have been just forgotten as a little interview, all of a sudden made it all the way around the world, people demanding Seth apologize, other people saying he didn't mean to say it, he said, yes, I did mean to say it, and it just got really blown out of proportion. So, I decided to do my homework. I listened to the podcast rather than just listen to the headlines saying what he said or didn't say. So here we have two comedians on a podcast, and the first thing you got to know about Seth Rogen, of course, is he is a comedian, but he is a Jewish comedian. In other words, his Jewishness is part of what he brings to his comedy. It brings it to the movie, he brings it to his interviews. He's from a household that is distinctively Jewish, pro-Israel. He's a native of Vancouver, Canada, went to Jewish schools, day schools, Jewish camps, and his parents met while volunteering at a kibbutz in the 1970s. So his bona fide's pretty strong. Well, as I listened to this, I went, oh, where are they going with this? I know they're trying to be funny, but we'll see. So he describes his proud Jewish background and his ancestors being blue collar and butchers and plumbers and deli workers. They're tough Jews. And his great-grandparents are tough. And he modeled this character in the movie off of these tough Jews. And that somehow old Eastern European Jews were tougher and worked with their hands, and no one is tough anymore, except the Israelis are really tough. So far, so good. But then the conversation starts to go when he went to Jewish sleepaway camp, and he said, I think trying to be funny, that there was an Israeli counselor who was psychotic. And I think he was trying to be funny, at least I hope he was trying to be funny, and that the purpose of Jewish sleepaway camp was to get young Jews to hook up with each other and find Jewish mates. And sometimes I use language other than what this mature podcast use. You can read between the lines. So the conversation goes further to the nature of Jewish humor, whether Jews are funnier. He goes on, reflects about anti-Semitism and how his grandparents faced anti-Semitism and beat the bejeebers out of people who tried to harass them. Again, they were tough. tough because they had to be. And then he reflected on how if you met a Jewish person in America, it is probably because someone tried to kill their ancestors in Eastern Europe, and that's how they made their way here, was because of anti-Semitism. And it kind of goes to the Holocaust, and then it kind of migrates to Israel. And the host eventually goes, well, would you ever imagine living in Israel? And he goes, no! And the host notes that what we say next is going to upset a bunch of Jews. To me, it just seems like a very antiquated thought process. If it is for religious reasons, says Seth, I don't agree with it because religion is silly. If it is for truly the preservation of Jewish people, it makes no sense. Because again, you don't put something that you're trying to preserve all in one place, especially when that place turns out to be pretty volatile. Everyone's trying to kill you. Doesn't make sense. And growing up, and this is where it kind of got into controversy, I was fed a bunch of lies. They forget to include the fact to every young Jewish person that, oh, by the way, aside from the Jews, there are other people living there. And then the host responds, they just want to make sure you are frightened of your own survival to the point when you get old enough to make sure that your money goes to Israel and that trees are planted, and you always speak highly of Israel, and Israel must survive no matter what. And then Seth says, and I don't understand it, and for Jews who are progressive, who challenge the status quo, the host says, I'm afraid to talk about it. And Seth says, I'm afraid of Jews. It's those Republican Jews, says the host, and they go on for a minute more about the right to be critical of Israel without being subject to criticism themselves. Okay, there you have it. That was the basis for the controversy. Some of you are right now on the outrage, like, I agree, can't believe he said it, terrible, and others are, so what? It's just his opinion, he's a comedian. Well, the name of the sermon is that his remarks are no laughing matter, at least to me. Sure, he's just a comedian, sure, he's just riffing. Perhaps it was doubtful that they even intended to talk specifically about Israel. It would have been better if they just stayed to the movie. They went on to these comedic riffs about summer camp, some stereotypes about Israelis and Israelis, but then it got a bit more serious and revealing, and hence the controversy. I think that sadly what Seth Rogen was saying was his unvarnished truth, and the unvarnished truth of increasing numbers of American Jews. And as such, I would say his remarks are as much controversial as they are revealing and upsetting. Listening to him promote a very distinctive Jewish movie, talking about his Jewish upbringing, there is no question that he is a proud member of the tribe. He may not be the most religious of Jews, but it is doubtful you could spend more than a few minutes with him without realizing that, yes, he's Jewish, and he's very proud to be Jewish. He's a proud ethnic and cultural Jew. And yet, despite his upbringing, there is a disconnect between him and Israel. And Seth Rogen is not the first to point this disconnect out. And that's why it's so important to understand what's really going on here. It's not as if we could invoke a cancel culture and say, boycott his movie, get rid of him, never again. We can't smother these feelings. They're out there, they're felt. We can't smother these thoughts. They're out there, they're being expressed. You may disagree with them, you may say they're uninformed, you may say, how dare he? But there's an increasing number of diaspora Jews in America, young, who think this way and who don't quite understand the rationale and the need for the state of Israel. And that's why it's no laughing matter, because we need to do something. Not smother, not cancel, but educate and inform, because if we don't, somehow we're losing the battle and we're letting disinformation rise to the fore rather than information and the real story of Israel. There's warts to be seen, to be felt, to be looked at, to be sure. It's not perfect. But by the way, Israel was never meant to be a perfect paradise. The founder said, the day that we have Jewish prostitutes, we will be like all the nations of the world. We wanted Jews to be normal. Jewish prostitutes, cab drivers, presidents, politicians, crooks, and saints and sinners. Anything but a ghettoized people that was marginalized and deprived of their homeland and their rights. We simply wanted to just be on this earth, to be Jews, however that person or people defined what it meant to be Jewish. That's the Jewish view of Zionism, that Jews should have a place all their own. Well, this idea is not what it once was. There has been what I call a drift and a rift. A drift and a rift. We see it. There's a strong BDS movement, boycott, divestment, sanctions movement, and many young Jews, ironically and oddly and strangely, have become involved in it. They've taken that narrative and said, maybe we should be boycotting Israel because they're doing things that are wrong that I disagree with. Where does this come from? And there's an organization called J Street, which again is left of center, that is the embodiment of American Jews who don't agree with many of Israel's current policies, further reflecting the drift and the rift. So that's why I don't think we can ignore his comments. Couched in comedy but expressed with a straight face, his comments do reflect the drift and rift between our two communities. And it is very unnerving for those such as myself who have devoted a lifetime to supporting the state of Israel. So here's my take. As American Jews have become more successful, they nevertheless have made ties to liberalism. And as American Jews assimilated, for many, liberalism trumped even core Jewish values, such as an absolute support of Israel. Growing up in the 60s and 70s, Israel could do no wrong. We watched as little Israel perform miracle after miracle to survive. Israeli politicians, military figures were our heroes and our Jewish celebrities. In contrast to the imagery of Jews walking helpless into the gas chambers, we now had a new breed of Jew who was willing to do what it took to fight back, to resist, to truly make the words "never again" a reality. No one could push us around. We had a country, we had a military, we had brave and sturdy Jews. But gradually the politics of the state of Israel changed. Founded by idealistic dreamers, democratic values, Israel not only fought for its survival, but was willing to do what it would take to compromise in order to make peace. And time again, Israel did that. And right now enjoys peaceful borders with Jordan and Egypt and several other Arab countries, to the point where Israel is prospering and developing these relationships, and they're seeing mutual benefit. But what has not been resolved has been a peace treaty between Israel and the Palestinians. That's a subject for a whole nother sermon or lecture. But the result was, when they came this close and the response was an intifada, the Israeli left fell apart. The right said, look, we told you they don't want peace, we have an intifada. And the Israeli left fell apart, and the Israeli right became the majority. And it's been a long time where that's been the case. Rift and drift. American Jews not necessarily to the right of the political spectrum, more to the left, and the Israelis more to the right. And therefore we started separating one from the other. I think that the Jewish community does itself a disservice in not allowing for discord. And even in that, Even in discord, we can't agree. A reporter for Haaretz newspaper in Israel reported that the chairman of the Jewish agency, Isaac Herzog, talked with Seth Rogen personally and said, yes, he's apologized. The world can be at peace. I've talked to him. He said he was wrong. He didn't mean to say there shouldn't be a state of Israel. Didn't mean it. It was comedy. And then Seth Rogen says, wait a minute, it was a private conversation. I didn't say that. And even if I did say that, I didn't give him permission to say what I said because it was private. So I stand by my words. And of course I believe there should be a state of Israel. Of course I love Israel. But I also will stick by my comments that my religious Jewish education needed a lot to be desired. So listening to the podcast, reading the follow-up story, at no time did I get the feeling that he felt Israel should not exist. But I did get the feeling that he doesn't understand fully why there is a need for a Jewish state. And that, my friends, at the core is what is most troubling. It is this feeling, this drift that goes beyond a rift, because it means that an increasing body of Jews in the world are failing to understand why there is a need for Israel. And as a corollary to this, why there is a need for a Jewish state called Israel. The notion has somehow considered racist has begun to take hold. And we should own the fact that to a degree we have failed in educating the next generation of Jews as to the story of Israel and the importance of Israel, and why Israel is so central to the Jewish experience. They don't know what life was like before Israel. They just see mighty Israel, and they think that, well, it should be perfect, it should be idealized. But it's okay to talk about the warts. It's okay to shine the light, because the mission of Israel is a homeland for all Jews and is a place where we can be free, and yet we accept that it can be held to a higher standard. Lebanon has a huge explosion. Immediately Israel responds and says, you're injured, come to our hospitals. We will take you in. We will send help. We will send hope. Lebanon, quiet on that offer. But doing the right thing, hoping to chip away at hostility in hopes of making peace between two peoples, Israel has never stopped trying and never will. Today's generation embraces, I think, a more generalized humanistic values, and particularism is often shunned in favor of universalism. For my father, my mother, the idea of Israel was originally only aspirational. For my generation, it was holding on to and building a dream. For this generation, it is no dream, it is a reality with warts and all. Well, columnist Jonathan Tobin writes, despite the arguments of the Jewish left, the growing Israel diaspora divide has little to do with opinions about the settlers or even Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's closeness with President Donald Trump. The difference between these two Jewish tribes goes farther deeper than politics. The American Jewish problem with Israel is not with what it does, but with what it is. The two nations are bound together by support for the values of democracy and are natural allies in the context of the contemporary Middle East. But there is a profound difference between the American experiment in democracy, which is avowedly non-sectarian, and a nation state whose purpose is to provide a home and security for one specific people that has been persecuted for 20 centuries. Like most other nations on the planet, Israel is an expression of particularism. Its priority is to reconstitute and defend Jewish sovereignty in the ancient homeland of the Jews, and not to be the last and best hope for all mankind. He continues, Rogan's comments mattered because they seemed to spring from a typical American Jewish alienation from a Zionist project that has always been difficult to reconcile with contemporary secular liberalism, no matter what Israel does or who leads it. It may pain Israelis and those Jews who still do back Zionism to admit it, but for all too many in the diaspora, the fate of Jews in a world where Israel might theoretically no longer exist is inevitably going to be of little interest when compared to what they consider more relevant concerns about racism and other more fashionable causes. That's why it matters. We have a lot to contend with, a lot to understand, a lot to explain, and a lot to deal with. While Tobin's analysis may seem a bit harsh, maybe even a little strong, I have found that a lot of it is true among many of our young people. Teaching Israel is hard. For many, their only experience is what they see on television, and that is often biased against Israel. They think of it as a place of explosions, of volatility, and whatever they see in terms of negativity on television, that is the lens by which they come to understand Israel. And it's not until they're lucky enough to be in college or a little bit older where they go on birthright. So I would submit that perhaps before birthright we need to start earlier. That somehow some philanthropists or multiple philanthropists or those who can afford it should not wait until they're college age. Send them in high school. Let them understand before they enter college what Israel is all about. Having gone to Israel about 20 times myself, I see Israel in different eyes every time I go. Is it that Israel's changed? Yes, but it's also because I change. I remember my first visit at age 16 and my eyes were open. I had no idea of what was going on. And then I returned at 21, at 24, and at 30, and 32. And every time I began to understand more and more the complexity of this amazing country. One visit, one book, one news story, won't do it justice. So I think to the extent that the critics said, Seth Rogan, you need to be educated properly, they were right. He needs to go back to Israel now and see really behind the headlines and understand what's really going on in Israel, warts and all. But I guarantee you, he will come back changed from what he feels is really happening there, because it'll go beyond the propaganda and it will go to the heart of the matter and the struggle between two peoples for one piece of land. That is heartbreaking for both peoples. Well, I hope I shed some light into this controversy so that you understand that what was reported was not necessarily what happened, but that what was reported is definitely important to look at, to discuss, to argue and wrestle with, because our relationship to Israel as diaspora Jews is too important to ignore. So I challenge you to visit Israel when it's safe. I challenge you to learn about Israel now and not wait, and to have open discussions with your children and your grandchildren, because Israel is too important not to understand or to be embraced close to our hearts now and always. Shabbat Shalom.
Laugh it all
beautiful song of hope. We continue now with our concluding prayers, 586. We rise for the Alena. You may be seated. So we turn to our Kaddish prayer found on page 598. We recall those who have died in recent weeks and whose anniversary Yortzeit of death occurs at this time as well. So if you would like to submit names of people who are important to you, please submit them to the web stream at this time, as we have a little bit of a delay. With the preciousness of memory, we think of Erwin Molaski, Barbara Frank, Gail Frank, Joe Cuevas, Arlene Ruditsky, Carol Eileen Lebrant, Gladys Hector, Ann Roque, Rose Vetty, Jane Radoff, Arnold Famillion, Howard Strong, and world-renowned Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz. The Yortzites of Anna Abramson, Bryna Barsky, Israel Began, Ann Bennett, George Berger, Edith Bernstein, Ida Birnbaum, Nathan Bobrow, George Brender, Alan Brown, Ann Shannon, Leroy Cherry, Max Meyer Cohen, Oded Dagan, Gertrude DeStefano, Renato DeGrazia, Michael Festins, Sina Leah Fishbein, Judith Fisher, Elizabeth Rosalind Garlick, Harry Gratz, Lauren Green, William Hellman, David Hirsch, David Cantor, Eugene Kirschbaum, first president of Ner Tamid, Albert Lenoble, Matt Lepp, Lucille Levenshon, Edith Margone, Solomon Miller, Tilly Horn-Tilhelman, Ann Rabin, Hyman Rosenthal, Maureen Sablé, Esther Sherman, Sam Simon, Norman Smith, Rosa Sokolowski, Carol Spector, Samuel Stahl, Francis Steinberg, Abe Tarnowski, Rosalind Wayne, and Judith Wickler.
Fred Budaneris, Arthur Clark, Larry Brenner, David Robert Cantor,
(598). We say Kaddish together. Yit Gadol v'Yit Kadash Shmei Rabbah, V'yalma Divrach Hirutei V'yamlich Malchutei, V'chayechom V'yomechom V'chayedech Al Beit Yisrael, V'agalav Isman Kari V'yamru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mevorach Le'olam Omeil Maya, Yit Barach V'yishtabach V'yit Ba'ar V'yit Ramam V'yit Naseh, V'yit Hadar V'yit Taleh V'yit Talal Shmei Dekusha B'richu, Leila Min Kol Birchata V'shirata, Tush Bechata V'nechemata, Gamiram B'yalma V'yamru Amen. Yehi Shlomo Rabba Min Shammai V'chayim, Aleinu V'yal Kol Yisrael V'yamru Amen. Osei Shalom B'mromav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu V'yal Kol Yisrael V'yamru Amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us and to all Israel, to which we say,
Amen.
All right. Bodhi, please come forward. We've got a little kiddush and motzi.
First I was a dental hygienist, now I'm going to be doing surgery.
That's right. Boy, we learn things quick in this COVID world.
And God blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pari hagafen. Amen.
L'chaim.
Okay, so I think this is the first time we've had a surprise challah. I wasn't told what it is.
It's a surprise?
I thought I saw a sprinkle.
How do you know it's a challah then?
It is a challah.
Okay, that much we know.
Yeah.
And who made it?
This is from the McLaughlin family.
Oh,
So they had like a bake party last night with the Wertheimers.
Okay.
I think. Don't worry, we're all quarantined together. It's all right. I don't know if it was over Zoom or what, but I know it's from the McLaughlins, and
Okay.
they've been planning it for a month.
Oh my God.
So.
What a build-up.
Yes.
It
And
looks like there's a glaze on it.
I feel like there's like something in there, and there's like a sprinkle that fell out over
Is
here.
there a glaze?
Yeah, well, it's probably
Maybe.
egg glaze.
Maybe.
Yeah. So, all right, here we go. Oh, and the plate, I should point out, was from our preschool. So we're gonna.
Okay.
It's a really cute with all the kids' names. So preschool will be back in action very soon.
Well, so do we need takers for like the next few weeks?
It's getting slow. I have them for all the bar and bat mitzvahs, but in September we're gonna need them, especially for the round ones for holidays. So.
All right, so get cracking. We want to see some chocolate challahs.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
Look at this.
Amen.
Look at this.
A funfetti
Look at
challah.
this.
That's excellent.
Bodhi, look at this. Go grab your piece.
It's so hard to see it from the camera, but yeah.
It's funfetti.
It's like funfetti, yeah. There's chocolate chips, Rabbi.
Okay, there's a bunch here.
Oh my goodness.
It's got to fit into that Seth Rogen movie when they go old school challah and new.
Oh, there's nerds in that. Like, you know, like the candy?
Mm-hmm.
Nope. I'm trying to control the camera from the web. Okay. I'm gonna zoom in on it
I
for
think
you.
it kind of made a little bit of a mess.
It made a mess. It was great.
Yeah. Looks good.
All right, I hope you're all enjoying your own challah at home.
You want it?
Yeah.
Okay.
We are closing with Olam Chesed Yibaneh. We will build this world with love in honor of Tu B'Av falling this last week. It is up to us to bring love to the world.
Little M&Ms. This is really messy challah.
Olam chesed yibaneh,
What
yadalai, lai, lai, yadalai, lai. Olam chesed yibaneh, yadalai, lai, lai, yadalai, lai. Olam chesed yibaneh, yadalai, lai, lai, yadalai, lai. Olam chesed yibaneh, yadalai, lai, lai, yadalai, lai. I must build this world from love. Yadalai, lai, lai, yadalai, lai.
And you must build.
And you must build this world from love. Yadalai, lai, lai, yadalai, lai.
And if we build,
This world from love, yadalai, lai, lai, yadalai, lai.
then God will build.
Then God will build this world from love, yadalai, lai, lai, yadalai, lai.
Good Shabbos.